just by changing the verb forms. So having had this problem, now what's it like to think about what it will be like to have your outcome? Okay. Now, in fact, we're going to be moving into jumping around even more with time frames. To explore these next several sentences, what I'd like for all of you to do is to, these are in your notes, by the way, and so you don't need to read them just yet. What I'd like all of you to do is to, again, put your notes down or aside and think about an area in your life in which you want change. So an area in which there's some limitation and some outcome that you have. And no big deal, by the way. We're not going to get into any heavyweight issues, at least for the first couple of days in here. And then maybe a medium weight issue on day 3, something like that. So just lightweight stuff. But something in which you want change. Now, using the content that you have in mind, let's go through this sentence. So if you could make this change for yourself so that you could stop having already made that change and see yourself now, do you like the way you look? Is that fun or what? Let's do it again. So, okay. So if you could make this change for yourself so that you could stop having already made that change and see yourself now, do you like the way you look? So, what did you do inside your brains as you put your own content through this question?
It gets so scrambled, it's almost like, why not?
Like, why not? Yeah. How many of you, your conscious mind kind of gave up partway through that? So those of you who have some conscious representations of where you went and what happened, where did you go first in time? If you could, if you could make this change for yourself, so that's present or future, but it's not on the timeline yet, is it?
No.
Right, so it's present or future, hypothetical, off of the timeline. If you could make this change for yourself so that you could stop. Now what happens when we say stop? It brings you to the present and interrupts the pattern. Exactly. That word stop does a lot for interrupting pattern, and all of a sudden here you are associated in the present moment. Having already made that change, so now the change is already done in the past, and now also notice we switched from if you could make this change for yourself so that you could stop having already made that change. Notice what's the difference there from this change to that change?
This change is sort of present, that change is past.
already did it.
It's done.
Yes, that change is farther away. It's further in the distance. It's more dissociated. And see yourself now. Do you like the way you look? So what do you do when, as you're seeing yourself now and wondering if you like the way you look? What does this remind you of?
Sort of a future phase almost, but it puts it more into the present.
Is there an NLP pattern that comes to mind with this? And see yourself now. Do you like the way you look now, having already made this change? What's that? Well, similar, sort of.
I took something away and I brought something.
So when do you make an image of the you that you will be when you've already solved this problem? Yeah, the swish. Yeah. So this is one way to conversationally invite someone to create a desired self-image, image of the you that you are having already made this change. Okay, interesting. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that just by saying these words, every person you say them to is going to complete the swish pattern. However, it does invite you to create that desired self-image, and then you need to keep your sensory acuity alert and notice, did you get that result or not, and continue on with, really hammering in, you could say, or really making an association with the desired state. Okay, now the next one, you can use the same content if you want. What will it be like when you have made those changes now in the future, as you look back and see what it was like to have had that problem, as you think about it now, here, sitting in this room? It's kind of hard to even think about having that what once used to be considered a problem, isn't it? Okay, what will it be like when you have made those changes now, in the future, as you look back and see what it was like to have had that problem, as you think about it now, here, sitting in this room? Now, where do you jump in time for that one? You're jumping back and forth between the future and the present, and the problem goes where? It goes away. What tends to happen for me is, what will it be like when you have made those changes? So now, the changes in the past relevant to this point in time. And then now, what happens? Pushing that whole experience back so that the change goes into the past. In the future, as you look back and see what it was like to have had that problem, as you think about it now, here, sitting in this room. So it really does the same process again, a second time, of going into the future, looking back on the problem, and then pushing it all back so that now I'm in the present, looking back on the problem. Okay, now one more of these weird ones. When you will have already gotten the learnings from that problem you had, which of your new possibilities will please you the most now that you think about it? Okay, one more time. When you will have already gotten all the learnings from that problem you had, which of your new possibilities will please you the most now that you think about it? So when you will have already gotten, so we're starting out then going into the future. When you will have already gotten the learnings from that problem you had, so now the problem is back there somewhere. Which of your new possibilities will please you the most now that you think about it? Coming back to the present, yeah. Okay. So, and incidentally, those first two questions are from Richard Bandler. The last one I did. So now we'll all have a chance to create these weird sentences. You didn't think that Richard Bandler and I and these other people were going to get all the fun, did you? So what I need now is two people to just jump up to demonstrate this exercise. Okay, Ron and one.
Right here.
We won't make you work that hard. One more person. Okay, great. Ron and Jim. Now, I want one of you to have some limitation and outcome in mind, something mild. Which of you would like to have that role? Okay, great. So, Ron, I'll have you stand right here so that, as I look at you, I can also look back on the flip chart this way. Now, Jim, what I'd like you to do is to go and put in those boxes, without being too concerned about where you're putting things, just at random. Put a 1 in one box, a 2 in another box, a 3 in another box.
Of any of the 6 boxes.
Of those 6 boxes, yeah. Okay, great.
So it's a 1.
That's a 1. That's, yeah. Okay, great. So now what I get to do is to follow the sequence that Jim has just given me. So I'm going to start with, if you could step back just a little bit, Ron.
Sure.
I'm going to start with the limitation in the future. So that'll be kind of interesting. And then from there, I'm going to go to resource in the present, and then resource in the past. And I'm going to just use the words limitation and resource. So I don't need to get into any content. And then Ron is going to listen to what I say and try it on with his content and see what happens. Okay? So, Ron, in the event that even after making this change, you will notice just a tiny remnant of that former limitation, what resource do you already have that you're fully aware of now that, having had this resource many times, can be the most useful to you?
Interesting.
So now we get some feedback from Ron, just a few words as to how did this affect his experience?
Well, I mean, first I went out to the future.
Mm-hmm.
I thought of having made a small change,
Mm-hmm.
and then I reflected right now to the present as to what resources I have, and also some of the resources I have in the past as well. So it's kind of weird.
Yeah, okay. And now, having done that, I'm curious, does that make a difference in your experience in terms of how you perceive what this issue has been?
Yeah, it's a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a full-blown change at all, but it's definitely different.
Right. Different in what way?
In the sense of where I'm looking for my resources. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking right now, and I'm also looking for something that I can find in the past to make a difference in the future.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Jim and Ron. Okay, so groups of 3, and this is also in your notes on the next page, page 22. Person A just thinks of a limitation, or area in which you want change. Person B puts 1, 2, and 3 at random in those boxes. So you're not trying to have a sequence that's going to be useful or familiar or anything like that. In fact, it can be fun to, the limitation in the future is a bit of a stretch. So it can be fun to deal with things that you would not typically do. And then person C uses words to match the sequence of numbers in those boxes on the chart. Now, as a stretch, you can omit the words past, present, and future, and just use your verb forms to take you from one place to the next. So to go to the future, for example, what words would you use? Will. Yeah, so when you will already have this, blah, blah, blah. And for the present, what words used to bring you here? Yes. So now is another word that you could use, although again, that's a bit of a crutch. So if you want to really stretch, you can leave out now also. And just say, what do you already have? And you don't even have to use the now marker word to indicate the present. You can just use those verbs. What resources are you already aware of, having had these resources many times? So I didn't say also having these resources in the past. Just said having had these resources many times already. So experience how to change time frames without even using some of the common easy markers. If you want to stretch, to start with, go ahead and use those words to help you. And then see what happens if you leave them out and still move around in time just using the verbs. And then get some very brief feedback from person A. And what we're looking here, and incidentally, any feedback here is useful. So whether the sentence that you gave was positive, whether it was negative, whether it helped, whether it did nothing, whatever feedback you get is great, because then you can take that, you can match it with your observation of their nonverbals, and then you can utilize that feedback to find out, well, if I were to change some words a little bit, would that make it more useful for the person? So the point here isn't to get a victory right away. It's just to get the feedback and learn and try out some different choices. Now, if you try out several choices and the person still says, well, that's not working for me very well, you could also ask them to take your place. and say, okay, if you were doing this, what way of using those words in sequence would work for you? You know, so you can also ask for that kind of feedback. What would work for you? Okay, so again, let's get in new groups of 3, and let's take about 10 minutes on this one, so you have plenty of chances to try out weird sequences. And after the exercise, then we'll be breaking for a little break.